What are some not fun facts? Newborn harp seals have 10 days before they are abandoned by their mother. They need to learn how to swim before the ice melts so that they won't drown. I saw a documentary that covered this. It was amazing. Little dude was scared but finally went in the water. He spent a couple weeks around the same hole in the ice while he learned how to extract air from bubbles trapped under the ice shelf. Then he was off into the world. Whiskey distiller Jack Daniel couldn't remember his safe combination and kicked the safe in frustration. Got an infection in his toe that killed him. Shoebill mothers will only raise one chick, so when 2 eggs are laid, the mother will leave the nest to let them hatch. When those eggs hatch, one is always aggressive and violent, and the other chick is always the timid and sensitive one. The violent one immediately rushes out of the egg to assault the timid one on sight. When the mother comes back to see the aftermath, the timid one limps to its mother for comfort and protection. The mother then takes her time beating the timid one to death with her bill, until it's nothing but a mangled lump of meat and bones, and raises the aggressive chick. I saw this in a Netflix documentary on the animals of Africa. David Attenborough actually had to manifest into corporeal form after the end of that particular scene, to console the viewer and remind us that nature can be scary as fuck sometimes. Edit. Words and shit. Edit. 2. For those asking the name of the doc, it was called Africa, and was made by BBC, back in 2013. I just found out an hour ago that it's no longer on Netflix. Edit 3. Don't know why I'm using Roman numerals. They don't always kill the weak one by beating it. Sometimes they just ignore it and let it die of starvation or dehydration, which is actually what ends up happening in the documentary scene I mentioned. As one commenter pointed out, the beating usually happens if the weaker one is injured or is born with physical disabilities. This is even more terrifying if you know what the animals look like. Their beaks are huge and insanely sharp at the tip. If you're attacked by a bear, it won't necessarily try to kill you like other predators would. It just starts eating. To add to this, it also depends on the bear. A little rule of thumb is the following depending on the type. If it's black, fight back. Black bears typically don't want to fight and will often run away in a confrontation. If it's brown, lay down. Grizzlies are the same. Humans don't make a good meal for them, and if they don't see you as a threat, they won't try to actively kill and eat you. If it's white, good night. Polar bears don't give a shit and will eat you. Running, laying down, or trying to fight back won't help you. Best advice is to discard an article of clothing while running in hopes they'll stop to investigate it. From an older comment of mine that fits this question, the Challenger astronauts didn't die when the shuttle exploded. The stack actually just broke apart under aerodynamic stress, and the explosion you thought you saw was just the expanding cloud of hydrogen from the external tank burning. The forces involved in the breakup were very survivable. The crew cabin was left intact after it separated from the rest of the orbiter and may not have depressurized. There's evidence to suggest some or all of them were conscious at least part of the way down, if not the entire time. And photography of the disaster shows the cabin falling without spinning in a nose down attitude, meaning no excessive forces to knock them out. The impact with the ocean was what actually killed them. It took 2 minutes and 45 seconds from breakup to impact. It's possible that some or all of them were conscious and aware the whole time. In high school, my science teacher was chosen to be in the Teachers in Space program for the Challenger. She went through the training and got a jumpsuit from NASA and had pictures with the crew and knew them all personally. She wasn't chosen to be aboard the Challenger but witnessed it in person and watched her friends die. She was given a piece of a white panel which she held a torch to during her lecture and then passed it around to show how it reflects heat. If you're going to be murdered, chances are very good you've already met your killer. There is a whale that has been searching for a mate for the last 5 years. It has been wholly unsuccessful because its voice is a different frequency than other whales. So much so that whales run from it. This is so sad, WTF. There are most likely people that are stranded at sea or in the desert right now that will probably never be found. I wonder about this sometimes. or how many kidnapping victims there are out there who just want to go home. So sad. Literally so many trafficking victims. Like an unfathomable amount who are out there. It's awful to think about. I think of Amanda Barry, Gina D. Jesus and Michelle Knight sometimes and remember how Amanda mentioned seeing her mom on TV and some psychic told her that her daughter was dead. They managed to escape, but think of the countless others in situations exactly like theirs who have no hope of escaping. Demodex mites live in the pores of your skin and eat your dead skin cells and oils. They also climb out at night and have a gangbang on your face. Worst part, you're not even invited. Thanks, wasn't planning on sleeping tonight anyway. Well, they're not doing a very good job. In my opinion, my face is still oily as hell. Cysticercosis is when a tapeworm manages to lodge itself inside your brain, causing big cysts to form in your head, causing headaches and seizures. About 20 years ago my mom caught this disease. We lived in an area where the food wasn't properly cleaned and my parents used to buy it from local markets on dirty alleys. So presumably after she ate some lettuce contaminated with eggs from those markets, she ended up having headaches that wouldn't go away and later found out she had cysticercosis. Even here where we live, Brazilian Northeast, it was a pretty rare disease, so I remember being scared. The cysts had to be removed through surgery and she lost part of her sense of smell, but other than that she's still completely fine today. Only feels pain when it's too cold because of the screws from the surgery. Her swift recovery was a surprise to the doctor and he ended up publishing an article about her treatment in the UK. To this day she doesn't let us eat vegetables in suspicious places and cleans everything like our lives depend on it. Up until the 1980s, babies weren't put on painkillers during surgery. It was believed they didn't feel pain. Man, leaded gasoline and baby torture. What else is there from the mid 20th century that made people go nuts? The Nazi regime, MK Ultra, the Cold War, the Red Scare, lots of stuff. The optimal height to hang someone is between 3-5 meters. The point of hanging isn't to suffocate the victim, it's to break their neck. Any less than the rope will strangle them to death, and any more they have a chance of being decapitated. That scene at the end of Sherlock Holmes, spoiler, where Lord Blackwood falls off London Bridge and gets hanged by a chain would actually have ripped his head clean off. Edit. Spelling. Male dolphins have been observed to gang rape females, kill dolphin babies that are not their own so their mums are. Available again, and for absolutely no reason other than entertainment, brutalize porpoise young. Kill dolphin babies that are not their own so their mums are. Available again. To be fair with them, there's a lot of other animals that do that. There is a genetic disorder that causes your body to replace your muscle tissue with bone over time. Edit. For those who are wondering, it's called fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, FOP, and currently there is no cure for it. Also, it's a genetic disorder, not a disease. Me apologies for those I confused with it. Edit 2. So I misunderstood again. It is a disease, just not a contagious disease. Is this disease where eventually you sort of freeze? So at some point you have to decide if you want to be sitting or laying for the rest of your life? Yes. For people with this disease there comes a time when they have to decide the permanent position of a limb as it slowly begins to freeze in place, knowing they'll never move it out of that position again. If I recall correctly, I'd have an accusatory finger point. Goats apparently have the most human-like vaginas of all animals. I don't wanna know how you figured that out. Banana republics were coined in the book Cabbages and Kings, about small countries based around single exports that were taken advantage of by large corporations. That company taking advantage of them for the book rebranded and is now called Chiquita. Also standard fruit, which became Dole. Don't forget Dole and Del Monte. Most giant food companies and agribusiness have controversies, some significantly more than others, like Nestle. The Great Molasses Flood, sometimes referred to locally as the Boston Massacre, occurred on the 15th of January, 1919, in the North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts. 21 people drowned in a wave of hot molasses. Horrible event, but I can't help but to laugh at Boston Massacre. I wrote a whole podcast episode on this a while ago. The flood was fucking biblical. Not only did it kill 21 people and countless animals, mostly horses, it obliterated entire buildings and streets. Like, tore buildings off their foundations and ripped them apart. There was a crazy amount of energy within that wave. It reached 15 featuring tall and traveled at 35 miles per hour. Edit. For those interested in listening, the podcast is called History Snippets. In Australia, there is a plant called a jimpy, otherwise known as the suicide plant. When touched, it delivers multiple stings with a long-lasting neurotoxin that is so painful that people would rather kill themselves than live through a few days of excruciating pain, and then a further several years of lesser pain, or full reoccurrence in the correct conditions. If the tiny hairs that deliver the stings are not removed, or are buried, the pain will continue for years. The pain, which has been described as feeling like being doused in hot acid and being electrocuted simultaneously, is so bad that people have been driven mad by it. Horses who have been stung by this plant have literally thrown themselves off cliffs. An ex-serviceman named Cyril Bromley is known to have fallen into one of the plants during World War II. Driven mad by it, he had to be strapped to a bed to prevent himself from committing suicide. Another rather unfortunate officer is known to have shot himself in the head after using one of the plant's leaves as toilet paper. Rather than live with the pain in his rear end, he chose to end his life. As the Wikipedia page says, the fruit is edible to humans if the stinging hairs are removed. I can just imagine how that went down. Hey, you know that plant that causes so much pain for the rest of your life that you want to die? I want to eat some of it. I would kill myself if that happened to my ass too. Fuck that. I'm glad that you nicknamed it the suicide plant, because jimpy sounds like quite playful. Thank you for watching and listening to my channel. Feel free to drop a comment and be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification button for the latest video I publish every day. See you on the next video, very Reddit fans.